Hello everybody and Happy New Year. This is my favorite time of the year on YouTube. I love watching everybody's like end of the year wrap-ups of their favorite makeup and their favorite books and all of that kind of stuff. So today we're gonna do a little reading wrap-up. This has not been a great YouTube year for me. The busyness of my life is just so different now. I have a kid who's a little bit older, like I have an 8-year-old, and so he played soccer and does drums and piano and just these different things that are literally like a part-time job. The amount of hours that it takes to do the pickup and, you know, go get him something to eat beforehand and change into the soccer stuff or pick up the piano music and then go sit at these things, or like get him settled and then go get my 2-year-old and then entertain her while he's doing his thing. Like, it's literally like a part-time job in addition to my full-time teaching job. And I've been writing a book this semester. It's supposed to be done. I'm almost done. I got really sick. I got sick a couple of times this year, so you know, it just hasn't been a great like output year. Hi.
Hi.
You want to be in the video?
Yeah.
Okay, come on over. All right, we have a special guest. I figured there'd be people coming in and out today. Oh, 2 special guests. I see. You got the baby?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So, anyway, while it hasn't been the best output year, especially as far as YouTube, it's been a pretty good input year. Like, I have input a lot of books into myself. This year we got 80 books, which is kind of surprising, but also like I was able to read at soccer practice sometimes, and I usually read like before I go to sleep. Like this little one, hello. She likes to fall asleep in my bed, but I have to stay awake so that I can move her to her bed once she does fall asleep. So I usually like just sit there and read while I'm waiting for her to fall asleep. Is that not how it goes? No?
Mommy, you
Yes.
like your glasses?
Uh-huh, I like those glasses. I'm not gonna wear them right now, but I'll probably wear them later.
But it's so hot.
Yeah.
You have to wear it.
I will soon.
You have to wear it, Mommy.
Okay.
It's too cool, but I want to be up there.
Okay.
Okay? First your glasses will glue and it will be cool there.
Okay. Okay, so anyways, thanks for sitting through a little life update.
Okay.
This year I kept track of my books geographically again. I'm really into setting and how setting impacts the plot, and because I don't really read fantasy or science fiction, like that's usually the first question I get, like where would you put it if it's fantasy and it's in like a different world? I don't think I read any fantasy this year. I'm still working out all my stats for the year. I love doing this kind of like end of the year breakdown stuff. I read lots of historical fiction, just like contemporary and literary fiction, and then nonfiction. Sometimes the nonfiction is a little bit hard to figure out where to place that, like depending on the topic, but usually I'll just go with like the author's residence, you know, wherever they're from or whatever. Some books do have multiple settings and, you know, they move around quite a bit, so I just kind of go with like what I thought was the most important setting, or maybe where they spent the most time or something like that. So it's not always perfect. And then I also split them up by continent, and continents are pretend and really don't always make a lot of sense, especially with places that are kind of like in an overlap area, like Palestine, for example. Where do you put that? Africa? Asia? Europe? Like, I didn't really have a continent that was the Middle East, because that's not a continent, it's just a region. So sometimes I just had to make a decision, and then sometimes I'll make like a specific decision. Like I read a book that was set in Hawaii. I put that on my Asia map because it's not really North America. Like I had a North America map. It's not really that. So I read another book yesterday. Here, let me show you an example. Like these books are both set in Russia, but this one I'm putting in Asia, and this one would be Europe. Like Moscow is so much further away. I don't know how many miles apart these two books are from each other, but thousands and thousands, I think.
Again.
Way west and way east. Like I wouldn't put them on the same continent even though they're in the same country, you know? So I think stuff like that is really fun. I like to just challenge myself to read outside the US as much as I can, or even within the US, across the US, you know? So many books are set in New York. I love a book set in New York, but sometimes you gotta, you know, move around a little bit. Okay. Blippi and Mika to the rescue. I can't multitask all the time. I'm always multitasking, and this is one thing that I like to do without multitasking. Can I have one thing that I don't do while simultaneously parenting? Please, one thing. Reading is multitasking, cooking is multitasking, getting ready is multitasking, cleaning is multitasking. I'm always multitasking and parenting at the same time. So let me just do this one thing. Okay, so let me figure out how to organize this. I keep track of my reading in multiple places. So I like Goodreads. For a long time I didn't really use Goodreads. I like Goodreads. I kept changing my goal. So I have 80. So 80 for 2024. I also have just like my little graphics that I keep on my computer that show the geography. I also write down like the books that I read each month in this little reading journal. And then I do Storygraph as well. People love Storygraph. I don't really like it that much because the data that it gives me is like not useful. Like it gives you graphs, but of like how fast or slow you read, who cares? And then it gives you like genres kind of, but there's like 500, so then that doesn't really help you either. So I kind of just like to make my own data much better. Like I like the geographical data. Here, what I did for the year was like everything is color coded because the titles, I color coded the genre so that I can like go through and add up how many of each genre I read. And you know, sometimes you just have to pick. I think on Storygraph, like they just give multiple genres to each book title, but I'm like, no, let me just like pick one. Let's just go with one. And then how many stars I gave it, and then which continent it was on. So I have like the geographical data, my ratings, and then genre. And then of course, like, you know, how many I read in a particular month. So what I'm gonna do to organize like my favorite books of the year is just go through each month and choose a favorite from each month. I think that's kind of, I don't know, that's just the best way. That's what I usually do, and then it narrows it down to like 12 or so. Sometimes I'll combine some months together or pick two from certain months that had really good books or whatever, but pretty much we're just gonna do that. So before we do that, let me just give you the geographic breakdown. Okay, so North America obviously had the most. I read 39 books set in North America. So that's basically half of my 80. I'd be curious to see what it is for most people. Is it like half, maybe more? They are spread across the continent, I would say. I tried, or like made a concerted effort to read more in Canada. One was in the Yukon Territory, one in Nova Scotia. Dang, I did like no Mexico. I have one that is set in like the Maya Empire. And I put that on my South America map. I guess it could be North America. I guess that does fit a little bit better in North America, but whatever. I'm gonna leave it South America. Next year I need to read more set in Mexico. The second most common continent was Europe. So I read 19 books set in Europe. A lot of them were in Greece because I'm writing a book about ancient Greece. So I read a lot of Greece. I don't even think I put all the stuff that I read for, actually I definitely didn't put all the things that I read for research on this, but at least I put some of them. I read a lot set in Ireland. I read a lot of Irish authors this year. Really into Irish authors. Like there's always quite a few in England, London, you know, like that's a pretty common literary setting. Wolf Hall is so freaking good. I can't wait to read the rest of the series. Took me forever to read Wolf Hall, but loved that. Yeah, so that one, I didn't really get much over into Eastern Europe. So next year I want to try to get more into Eastern Europe. Okay, I think Asia came in next. I have 13 set in Asia. And again, I'm counting like Hawaii is Asia. this peninsula in Russia as Asia, whereas some people might make a different choice. Iran, Asia, you know. So it's kind of just cool to see like how things lay out there. A couple of Lisa C books this year. The Women, I think everybody read The Women, which again is, you know, begins in Vietnam and then ends in the US, but I was like, like the most significant thing about the setting of the book is that it starts in Vietnam, so put it there. I think South America came in next. Only 5 books in South America, so I need to up my South American reading next year. Violetta, On a Night of 1,000 Stars, and Freedom is a Feast are all about, like, you know, these dictators and then these coups, and yeah, I feel like we should probably read up on that kind of stuff right now, you know? Those were all really, really good. So yeah, I need to read more set in South America next year. Let's see, next I think is Africa. Only 4 set in Africa, and then again, like The Lemon Trees, Palestine. I thought I read so much more in Palestine. I think I'm just like partway through a bunch of books set in Palestine. I need to finish them, so they'll be on my 2025 list. But again, like, where do you put that? I don't know. I just put them in Africa. Everybody needs to read Cobalt Red. The Old Drift is just very, very cool. I just know I'm gonna finish this today, so I haven't quite finished it yet, but My Sister the Serial Killer is set in Nigeria. That's also going on there. Definitely need to read more set in Africa as well. My last little section is Australia, and this book was terrible. Everyone in my family has killed someone. This book sucks. I only picked it because it was set in Australia. But I do have one on my TBR that is set in New Zealand. It's like a YA book, I think. That one looks much better. I would count New Zealand with Australia, I guess. So I'll try to up my Australia reading a little bit next year as well. So we just gotta spread out a little bit, you know? So anyway, I have these templates on like Teachers Pay Teachers in case you are interested in tracking your reading this way. It's kind of hard, but I like it. I think it's fun. Okay, moving on to the months. Let's get out my reading journal now. Sometimes I would like make mistakes in this one, so it's not a perfect way to just like write everything down, you know? But I do like having like the physical notebook of things that I've read. You know what else I'm gonna do today, I think? It's the last day of the Barnes & Noble like 30% off sale or 1/3 off sale or whatever, and I got a Barnes & Noble gift card for Christmas from my like work Secret Santa. It's a perfect gift for me. So I think after this, I'm gonna take the kids to Barnes & Noble and get out of the house. Okay, so January, 5 books, and my favorite of the month was called The Mercies. This one is set in like far, far northern Norway in like the 1500s. It was just so different. It is like a historical fiction, but again, because I'm so big on setting, in such a different setting than I had ever read before, a different time and a different place. Characters were so interesting. It's about this kind of like remote village, and all the men go on a fishing trip to get fish, and the women are still on the shore, and they can see this wave come, and this wave takes out the ship, and so it's only women left in the village now. And for a while it's like kind of great, but then the church gets involved and they're like, oh no, they can't just exist without any men. We have to like send a reverend there or whatever to watch over them and like bring more men in. So I think it's based on a true story, and it was really cool, really different. I liked that one a lot. February, I read a lot of World War II fiction, and then I would say that my favorite was a non-fiction book that I read about World War II called Blitzed, and it was about the drug use in the Nazi party and like all of the drugs that Hitler was taking and stuff. Oh my gosh, it is just like hard to put down. It's stuff that you would not have thought about before. Like that's how they were able to like move west into Europe and France and stuff so quickly, because everybody was like on speed. I had like heard people kind of say that before. I did not know the details or the extent, and yes, this makes much more sense. This is an aspect of the military, probably like everyone's military, that I hadn't really thought about before. So yeah, I don't know if I want to learn more about that or not, but yeah, this is a missing piece of my knowledge of World War II that now makes a lot more sense. And I would recommend this to like almost anybody, like my dad was kind of trying to get more into like reading some history books and stuff because it's just like fascinating. It's so hard to put down. You're like, oh my gosh. So I think pretty much anybody would like reading that one. Okay, March had a lot of really good books. The one that I'm gonna say was my favorite is called An American Beauty, just because it was about Arabella Huntington. And last year I was part of this like teacher advisory panel that got to meet at the Huntington like every other month or so. And so I got like a free membership for the year, and I got to just spend a lot of time at the Huntington, which is this huge, like, there's gardens, there's art museums. It's just like this amazing place. And I had always kind of like wondered like how did this get here? And the Huntington family, you know, left it as this place where, I mean, you have to pay to get in, but where, you know, the public can come enjoy the art and the gardens and everything. You can take like school trips there and stuff. And it was just really cool to learn more about the history. I mean, definitely this book like takes some liberties, but it was really interesting to just like learn more about that particular history because it's so local to me. Most of it is set in New York, but at the very, very end, they move out to California, and then this is where they live and, you know, what has been left behind now. So I really liked that one. April had a lot of really good books. My runner-up is gonna be The Marriage of Opposites. It's very similar to, what's that one called? An American Beauty, because it's historical fiction about somebody who's not like really, really famous, but it's set in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, which I got to go there last year, and this is, you know, what I study academically. So it was really cool to read a book set there, and I had learned about this artist while I was there, and I saw where he lived and stuff. So I really, really loved reading this book. But connected to that, I have to say my favorite was How to Hide an Empire, which is a nonfiction book about all of the United States territories, of which the Virgin Islands is one. But Virgin Islands doesn't show up in this book very much. I thought it would more. Mostly it's like Philippines, Puerto Rico, and then Japan to an extent. So like after World War II, we really controlled Japan. So it's fascinating. It's another one kind of like Blitzed, where it's just like this seemingly obvious part of US history. Like once you're reading about it, you're like, oh my gosh, yes, this kind of explains everything. But it's just something that you don't really learn about, people don't really talk about, but yeah, our empire is huge. Gosh, everything I read in April though was really good. I reread Their Eyes Were Watching God. Oh, it's so freaking good. And I listened to it on audio. It was amazing. When We Had Wings is another, so all of these were very connected. Okay, so How to Hide an Empire. Then I got really interested in all the different, you know, territories and World War II, just different like settings of World War II, which when I was teaching 8th grade last year, I had my students do a lot of reading around the world set in World War II. I have a whole lesson that I can share the link to on Teachers Pay Teachers. So anyway, Marriage of Opposites, you know, St. Thomas, and then An Artist of the Floating World is set in post-World War II Japan. So I was really interested in reading that. That one's just, it's so weird. It's so ethereal. It's a little bit hard to get into. But then When We Had Wings is set in Philippines. It's historical fiction. So everything I read in April was very like territories heavy. Okay, May was an all right month for reading. Even though I only gave it 4 stars, and I gave The Many Daughters of Afong Moy 5 stars, I'm still gonna say my favorite to read was New People by DAZEY Senna. I just love her, and that's the book that I've like thought about much more since the month of May. I can't remember hardly anything from The Many Daughters of Afong Moy, but I've thought about New People quite a bit. I love her writing, I love her characters. She writes a lot about people who are like kind of racially ambiguous, like maybe black and white, and how some people who like present more as black have a really different experience than people who present more as white. And so I'm just really interested in her writing. This battery sucks. I need to order a new one. I'm only on June and it's starting to die, so let's just keep going. My favorite, I have to say, for June was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I had never read that one before, and it's beautiful. It's incredible. But also Star Child, which is about Octavia Butler, and it's set in Pasadena. Star Child is like one of the best books ever. It's so different. It's by E.B.'s Boy, who's amazing. So Star Child and A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. July, I'm gonna have to say Small Things Like These was my favorite. This was a big Irish authors month. The Bee Sting, I also read that. But yeah, Small Things Like These. I got the movie as well. So Cillian Murphy is in the movie version of this. It's a perfect movie to watch every Christmas or book to read every Christmas. It's nice and short. It's kind of like A Christmas Carol, I would say. August, I think my favorite was The God of the Woods, which got a lot of attention this year. It's like a mystery thriller. There's a missing kid at a summer camp. That one was very good. September, my favorite was James, which also got a lot of attention this year, rightfully so. It's so good. Kind of a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of James, you know, versus Jim, and just so good. And Percival Everett is married to Danzy Senna, and you know, they kind of write in similar ways. So I love both of their work so much. October, I think I'm gonna say, even though there were so many good books, like The Most Fun We Ever Had, All the Colors of the Dark, my favorite was Force of Nature, which is very similar to Star Child. It's a biography of Rachel Carson written in verse, which is very, very similar to Star Child. Just so beautiful. I would put those two together. I would say read Force of Nature and Star Child together because they're awesome. Ooh, November. You know what I have to say is my favorite? You know, Teddy was really, really fun, but Managing Your Gaming and Social Media Habits was the best book that I read in November. Read that instead of the trash heap that is The Anxious Generation. I spent a lot of time tearing down that book online this year and in person because it's crap, but this book is amazing, and I have another one written by the same author that's so good. But then like Teddy was super fun. Oh, Hula. Ooh, Hula might also be my favorite. Hula is fantastic, set in Hawaii. The Wedding People was very fun. Didn't really love Intermezzo as much as it seemed like I was going to. Okay, December. Oh my gosh, what is, oh, Wolf Hall. Never mind, Wolf Hall. Wolf Hall was my favorite of December. Took me like more than a year to get through. I started reading it in book form, then I started like listening to it. I watched the series, like the BBC series. So I've done the listening, the reading, the watching. I love it in all of the different formats. It's so, so good. And I already got Bring Up the Bodies. So I'm gonna finish out the series, and it was just incredible. So those are my favorites of 2024. I hear the chaos behind me. Thank you for watching. I hope we get to talk more in 2025. And I will see you then. Bye.